Islam, according to Fakhruddin al-Razi, can be summed up in two statements. Ibadat al-Khaliq wa khidmat al-Khalq. Worshipping the Creator and serving His creation. Al-Khalq. The first hadith that is taught in the tradition of Muhaddithin is the Musalsal bil-Awwaliyah, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, in an unbroken chain that's taught to this day as the first hadith given to a hadith student, Ar-Rahimun yarhamuhum ar-Rahman, irhamu man fil ard, yarhamkum or yarhamukum man fis sama. Those who show mercy on those in the earth, the merciful will show mercy on those who show mercy on those in the earth. So the amount of grace that you get from God is commensurate with the amount of grace that you show to Allah's creation. That's the first hadith, based on the idea that the Prophet was a rahmah, a mercy to all the worlds. So that leads to the next question, which is how we deal with extremists. This was put on there, and I think a lot of people voted for this. If you look right now, everything is being brought up again. The news is filled with crazy Muslims. All the talking heads have come out. Obama has just announced a major outreach program to the Muslims, the Muslim community in the United States, hopefully not involving entrapment. Right? So a lot of Muslims, when they hear these things, it's like the Native Americans used to say, white man speaks with forked tongue. Now you can say, I don't know what we'd have to do now, because not just the whites are speaking with forked tongues anymore, right? Probably work out better just say that a lot of people speak with forked tongues these days. So how do we deal with our extremists? First of all, it's not on us to deal with our extremists. The vast majority of Muslims are not obliged to be dealing with extremists. Those who deal with the extremists are two: law enforcement agencies, if that extremism involves violence, whether it's in the Muslim lands or in the lands of other than the Muslims. Although, according to one view, anywhere where Muslims are able to pray and fast and practice their religion, it's a land of Islam. And the Prophet said, جُعِلَتْ لِيَ الْأَرْضُ مَشْجِدًا وَطَهُورًا. The whole world, al-ard, the whole world is a place of worship for my community. And he said, go where you want, and wherever you find good, stay there. So how do we deal with the extremists? The law enforcement has to deal with those who are violent, but not through entrapment and other things. We come from a system of law in the West that does not believe in preemptive law enforcement in the way that it has become imagined today. In fact, Eisenhower completely anathematized the idea of preemptive war, and he actually said that this is a Nazi idea. It's not, we don't have that in our understanding of a just war. The idea of, oh, I'm a little worried about these people, and so let's go crush them before they crush us. And we have, unfortunately, a best-selling author in the United States, New York Times bestseller, that argued for a preemptive nuclear strike on Muslims. And there was no uproar about that. If Muslims argued for a preemptive nuclear strike on Europeans or Americans, what would people be saying about that? But we have somebody here who's arguing for a preemptive strike, that it might be necessary at a certain point to kill them before they kill us. This is the type of madness that we're dealing with. When I was asked to speak in Washington about extremism, I said, look, extremism is as American as apple pie. This is one of the most extreme societies on the planet. I said, nowhere in the Muslim world do you have water drinking contests to see how much water a person can drink. They had a woman die here in Southern California in a water drinking contest because you can actually upset your electrolyte balance and die. But they were, let's see how many. They had a cockroach eating contest where a man died after the cockroach eating contest, and the prize for the contest was a boa constrictor. And he ate the most, and somebody said he was the life of the party. Well, he was the death of the after party, because he literally died from eating so many cockroaches. Where in the Muslim world are you going to have a watermelon eating contest? Where are you going to have a hot dog eating contest? And yet you can go on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll find hundreds of videos of people having hot dog eating contests. That is an extreme form of behavior. We have extreme sex in this culture. We have extreme music. For the first time, you ask doctors, especially those who are in ear, nose, and throat expertise, about young people losing their hearing because they're listening to music at extreme levels. And then if you don't think we have extreme violence, just look at some of the gun cult culture, the type of gun power that people are obsessed with. They go out and shoot machine guns. You don't need a machine gun to kill a moose. People hunt fish. They fish with dynamite. You just go, drop the dynamite, it blows up, and all the fish just come to the surface. That's one way of, that's not the kind of relaxed, you know. I mean, I mentioned last week, I saw a Chinese man flying a Chinese kite in San Francisco in the park. You know, we have a lot of Chinese in San Francisco. They go out and they do Tai Chi publicly, and he was flying his kite, and he was like he was doing Tai Chi. And I was just watching him, and then this man came from the indigenous culture, not the ancient indigenous culture, but the indigenous culture. It took me a while to work out because I would hear my Muslim immigrant friends say, oh, he was American. It took me a while to work out that meant white. That's like a code word for white. I didn't know that. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're American, you have citizenship. I mean white. That finally came out. So anyway, this guy was an American. He's got his supersonic kite that made a noise that literally you almost had to plug your ears. It was like a drone striker of kites. And he was flying this kite around, meow, meow, and making it. And there's the Chinese man just flying his kite like a Tai Chi master. And I was thinking, what a juxtaposition of two cultures. One that inculcates quietude and stillness and harmony, and the other that is obsessed with adrenaline rushes. And I know ER doctors that go skydiving on the weekend because nothing beats splitting open the sternum and doing a cardiac massage. Like the only thing that'll even come close to adrenaline rush like that is skydiving on the weekend. Skydiving is an extreme sport. In fact, I would argue that anybody that skydives, if they're not in the military, is a stark raving lunatic. I would never jump out of a plane unless I absolutely had to. And you'd probably have to push me out, even if I had to. That is a crazy thing to do. Muslims respect life. They don't risk their lives unless they have to. Mauritanians think you're a lunatic to swim in the ocean. Mauritanians live on the ocean. They never go swimming. They think people that swim in the ocean are mad because they know what's in the ocean that you can't see, right? And in this country, when I was a kid, they had a film called Jaws. Nobody swam for months after that film because they realized what was in the ocean. So extremism is a human problem. But when you have extreme conditions, a certain type of extremism emerges. When you have the type of imbalance that we have in the world today, you cannot be surprised at violent responses to those incredible conditions that people are suffering under. And I would argue that the African American situation in this country led to the type of violent responses, even though, again, if you study COINTEL history, you'll know that a lot of this was entrapment also. But the militancy that emerged in the 1960s was a result of extreme conditions. And I heard Brzezinski, who was in Carter's administration, I heard him give us talk about dealing with Muslim extremism, and he said, if you do not deal with the genuine grievances, like the grievances of the African American community in the 1960s, if you don't deal with those grievances, then you cannot expect the type of violent response to stop. You have to look at what is being said. McChrystal, one of these generals who was in charge of the special forces in Iraq, said, we have to understand why they're fighting. We want to pretend like this false narrative that, oh, they just don't like us. They don't like our freedoms. Okay, well, why aren't they bombing Sweden? Sweden's a more open society than the United States. I mean, this mythology that has been created around these scenarios is just unacceptable. People deserve a better understanding of the problem. And if we don't give them a better understanding, they won't be able to address the real issues here, the real problems. The Palestinian problem has to be addressed. You're looking at over 60 years of madness in Palestine. 60 years. And even going back further into the 1920s, when you had the British Mandate and bringing in a lot of the Jewish immigration. And there were, if you go back and read that early period, it's a very interesting history. And I was surprised to know that one of the first Zionist questions, I read a book by a Zionist who argued that one of the first questions was that they would succeed or fail based on how they treated the Arabs. So the original settlers in Israel were concerned about that problem, but it just became a response that we see the results of it today. One of my Syrian friends said to me, why isn't anybody doing anything about Syria? And I said to him, well, welcome to the club. That's what the Palestinians have been saying for the last 70 years. This is the human condition. People are overwhelmed. But if you don't address the real problems, I'm talking about the root problems. If you look at what we have is an emergency, when we have things like Boston, and these are emergency situations, in a medical system, you have the emergency room, but you also have the intensive care unit, you have the other units that take care of people of lesser extremes. And then you also should have in place a preventative system of medicine where you educate the people about exercise, about staying well. Healthcare needs to be addressed from all of the issues. The only way this country has dealt with the extremism is like an emergency room situation. There's no other addressing going on. And this is a major crisis.